Hello everyone, my name is PJ and welcome back to another episode of The Hoarder. For this session, Zaymot's player is unfortunately absent, so I narrate that all this time spent in frigid weather caused Zaymot to develop a cold, so he returns to rest among the Hoarder, far away from the ship and the action. Heading further down into the ship, which by the way is called the Golden Crown, the PCs reach the cargo hold and easily take out a small ambush of Kurotoa. Hearing the commotion, a Kurotoa priestess steps into the room through a pair of double doors. The room she exited from had been turned into a makeshift shrine, with its centerpiece being an effigy in the shape of an obese hippo made entirely of dung. The priestess was wearing a pendant made of coral that looked like a hippo's head, and her staff had the corpse of a lamprey fish wrapped over the shaft. She cast tongues on herself, and was able to converse with the PCs. She was alarmed that Chit so greatly resembled her new god, the Great Hippo she called it, and when Chit brought up the crystal rod, she claimed the Kurotoa were looking for it too, as their god wanted it. The priestess demanded the PCs leave her temple immediately before the rest of the tribe returned from hunting. Naturally, Chit pulled out his gun. The fight begins, and the priestess was preparing to cast a spell that would completely flood the hold. However, when Surge accidentally set his feet on fire with a wild magic surge dealing damage to him every round, she realized that would actually deprive her of an advantage. So she instead cast Spiritual Weapon and began buffing herself. However, she would never get the chance to make full use of them because Surge managed to critically hit her with a chromatic orb, dealing over 40 cold damage and turning her into a popsicle, killing her only shortly after the fight began. At Surge's request, Chit cuts off the priestess's staff arm, staff still attached, and hands it to him. Inside the shrine, they find a key, but before they do any more looting or investigating or fucking with the yacht yug, they decide to take a short rest in the 4 bedrooms in the lower deck. Now, every short rest within the vicinity of a dungeon, I roll for wandering monsters. Halfway through their rest, they can hear footsteps coming down the stairs outside, and the PCs already know it's more Kurotoa. That's when Chit gets a brilliant idea. One he would sorely live to regret. He and the others burst out of their bedrooms and made a beeline for the Kurotoa, but they're not the targets. Chit uses his mage hand to carry the key past the Kurotoa over to the chamber pot room door and unlock it. The plan was to let the Neo-Otyug deal with the Kurotoa and escape while it feasted on them. As the door bursts open, the Otyug's long tentacles reach out to try and grab anything within reach. It almost manages to grab a Kurotoa whip, but her Shield of Faith spell barely manages to protect her, and she dashes up the stairs and off the ship. Her 3 Kurotoa lackeys can't make it via the same stairway, so they flee down to the hold instead. With nothing left it can reach, the Neo-Otyug begins trying to break out of the room by destroying the wall, for it's too big to squeeze through the door. Surge and Balthazar lock themselves in a bedroom, and Elton locks himself in a different room. But before Chit can retreat as well, the Otyug breaks free, and sees that the only living creature left within view is Chit. Chit goes into his room anyway and locks the door, but he's already been seen. The Otyug has to constantly squeeze in order to fit inside the ship, so it crawls over to Chit's room and begins working on breaking down the door. The Otyug is so big that it completely fills the space between the 4 bedroom doors, blocking anyone from escaping. Luckily, we use the overrun and tumble rules, and with a couple of successful acrobatics checks, Balthazar and Surge manage to slip past the Otyug and escape into the hallway. They decide the best course of action would be to get the poop effigy and feed it to the Otyug as a distraction. So while they go downstairs to the hold, the Otyug finishes breaking into Chit's room. Chit uses his own overrun action to slip past the Otyug and tries desperately over the course of the next several rounds to escape. But here's the unfortunate matter concerning the initiative order. The Yacht-Yug took its turn almost immediately before Chit, meaning every time Chit tries to move away, he gets opportunity attacked. If it hits, which it always did, Chit gets restrained, preventing him from moving. On his turn, he uses his action to escape, meaning he can't use it to disengage. He attempts to flee, and the whole cycle starts over again. At one point, Chit was even knocked unconscious, but with our house rule, he took a level of exhaustion to act anyway and drank a potion of greater healing to get himself back up. While Chit is suffering like this, Elton is bravely opening his door, attacking the Yacht-Yug, and closing it again, dealing chip damage while trying to save his friend. Meanwhile, the Kuo-Toa who fled downstairs had holed themselves up in the shrine and were praying to the great hippo for salvation. That's when Surge gets the idea to cast Minor Illusion on the effigy, making it look like it was lifting one of its arms and pointing up. The zealous Kuo-Toa took this as a clear sign from their god, grabbed their shields and spears, and raced upstairs to give their lives fighting the Yacht-Yug. Their arrival creates a great distraction that keeps the Yacht-Yug from hurting Chit too much, but not enough to keep it from constantly re-grappling him. Balthazar rushes into the shrine and picks up the 100-pound poop effigy, then begins slowly carrying it upstairs. The Kuo-Toa had already seen it move once, but seeing it seemingly walk up the stairs to join them filled them with a zeal as they had never known before, enough to give one of them an automatic crit in its next turn. Even after Chit finally manages to escape, with he, Surge, and Balthazar fleeing up to the deck, the Yacht-Yug continued to be distracted by the one remaining Kuo-Toa, who it promptly deals with before starting to snack on the poop statue that Balthazar brought it. Balthazar and Surge go to the part of the deck directly above Elton's room, blast a hole in it, and pull him up to safety. As the final phase of this harrowing battle, the PCs open the hatch in the deck so that they can see below it without being down there. As they start firing upon him, the Yacht-Yug puts its meal aside and goes to the hatch opening, reaching up and out with its tentacles and grabbing Balthazar. However, after dealing enough damage to it, the Yacht-Yug releases Balthazar and it flees to the broom closet through which it originally broke in. Elton's having none of that, though. He almost sat idly by in a locked room while his friends nearly died. He leapt down the hatch and shot the Yacht-Yug, attempting to finish it off, but failed. Alas, Chit leapt down as well, and with a double 20, put the miserable aberration out of its misery. This was the single most epic and heart-pounding combat encounter I have ever run in any tabletop RPG. A terrifying super boss that spanned every floor of the dungeon, and one that the PCs actually won. I am honestly shocked that none of them died. Even their sidekick lived. With the Neo-Yacht-Yug finally dead, the heroes can search the bodies of the blue bandits. Instead of a crystal rod, however, all they find are a shit ton of money in their pouches and another key. This one goes to another room in the hold, the treasury. In the treasury, the PCs find even more gold, a bunch of valuable gems, a silver and sapphire statuette of a blue dragon, and an unidentified potion. But more than that, they also found a book titled Captain's Log. Deciding not to stick around any longer than they have to, they let Elton have all the platinum in the hoard and just leave the rest of the coins behind because they have no more room. Although, they could have just dumped all of their silver and taken the gold. And they snatch up the more substantial treasures before heading back to shore. Once there, they finally take a much-needed rest. Chit buries all the silver he found and says a prayer to Chandracool, earning him the Charm of Vitality, which will last until afternoon the next day. Meanwhile, Elton spent this time reading the captain's log, and what he read shocked him. He summarized the journal details the crew's exploits all the way from Anarok to here to Neverwinter and back to here. He says that Salvador was the one guiding them to the crystal rod, seeming to know where it was at all times. When they returned to Gundabarg with it, King Redax told them to bring it to Salvador in exchange for his kidnapped daughter, the princess. However, on their way to make the trade, they crashed upon the ice, and Salvador sent his minions to retrieve the rod from them. Salvador was now in possession, not only of the crystal rod, but also the Princess of Gundabarg, allowing him to keep Redax under his fat undead thumb.